to Yukon and start his company here, and I think he's preparing now for he's working out towards Series A, and he's working out of Yukon, and I think he's got 20 employees or something like that. So I mean, it is that's a SaaS company
Hmm.
working out of here, and it might actually be our first exit, right? And definitely our first company going Series A.
William, you're joining us for episode 111 from the Yukon territories with Uconstruct. Um, Thank you for joining us, man. This is probably one of the coolest locations to do a podcast with because, man, like I really wanted to know when we connected what's going on in the Yukon territories. So, William, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me up, and yeah, I'm always happy to share what we're doing up here, which is um, we've been really busy for the past 2 years. Granted, I've only been here for 2 years, but we've been really busy and lots of things have happened and lots of momentum, and it's a good time to to share. So thanks for the thanks for
Yeah.
having me, and thanks for the opportunity, right? So how can I start? How can I start?
Yeah, let's talk about first of all Yukon territories. I mean, growing up as an immigrant in Canada, like Yukon was like the fabled land, the land of like ice and snow. We used to
Right.
play this game when I was in grade school called Cross Country Canada, where
Mhm.
you would like take a truck and deliver goods across Canada as a way to like learn geography.
Mhm.
And one of my places was going to like Whitehorse, like Yukon, and like going all the remote areas because it's like it just seems so far away, right? But here we are connecting and talking about talking in real time. I really wanted to talk more about what's going on in Yukon territories. How is the environment there? What's going on with people? Like what are you guys working on out of the incubator?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So first of all, it is cold, and it is almost as remote as it gets. Of course, people in Nunavut and the Northwest Territories will tell you, they're further away, and and it gets colder. I think the what's interesting about the territories is that things work differently up here, right? And I think there are good and bad reasons for that, right? I think let's jump on the bad so we can talk about the good
Mm,
and expand on the good. But I think part of the bad is obviously we're remote, right? And so there are difficulties to running businesses up here. There are difficulties to living up here, right? So
mm,
the Yukon is a little more blessed in what we have better traffic, lots of trucks cross through Yukon, and connect Alaska with the mainland, and so we're blessed with a much better supply chain as far as the north is concerned. I mean, it isn't the greatest, but it is. But as far as the North, we're in a lot better shape than the other two territories. The second thing that I think there are three main ones. I think the second thing is obviously um, uh, the internet, right, and telecommunications, right. So I mean, we don't have a lot of telecommunications companies really service in the north, so
mm,
there's not a lot of competition. It's mainly Bell by way of Northwest Tel, which is it is really the company that serves the three territories. And we have Telus and a couple of other carriers, but it is a bit of a monopoly, right? So it is quite expensive to own a phone, as if it wasn't expensive already to own a phone in Canada anyway, and as compared to to other places. That's another one, and then the internet as well. I mean, it's quite unreliable, and so if you look at tech and so on, without a reliable internet, well, that's
mhm.
right. Like if you can really, if you can't, if you don't have access to reliable internet, well, it makes it hard to do the business up here and be in tech. And the third one, well, I guess it's because that it's what you said, right? That
Mm.
perception of the North being really remote, and by remote meaning life can be hard and so on. I think you know it isn't necessarily true anymore. And so the good things that have been happening, so leaving the bad aside, and because it is remote, and that idea that people have that it is remote translates in not a lot of people visiting, and not a lot of people moving up here, and not a lot of people considering the North as an ideal destination for startups and for innovative companies, regardless. of the of the growth model. And and so what's been done recently, right? And so I refer again. So I've only been here for 2 years. So I refer to what I have seen. So I've with much better internet right now, we're working on redundancy services, which will allow for our internet to be reliable, much like in the South, which is great. It's not we're not there yet, but major improvements have taken place in the past few months, and we we're working on programs to get people excited about moving up here and starting a business up here, and also those who would start businesses up here to stay up here and grow.
Mm.
So I do draw. I mean, I think I told a lot of people, just having spent a few years in Atlantic Canada, that I feel like that's the transition that has kind of taken place in Atlantic Canada, right? Who else would have said, hey, I'm gonna start a fintech company in Newfoundland, and 10 years ago, and I'm gonna go public, and I'm gonna be acquired for 10% of Newfoundland's GDP or something like that.
Mm.
That happened a few months ago, towards the end of last year,
Mm.
with the company's Verafin. So
Mhm.
who would have said, the PEI or Atlantic Canada, were ideal destinations for startups or for tech companies 10 years ago? Well, not many, but look at where we are now. And so I think a lot of that has to do with, the determination on the one hand of the Canadian government. I have to give them that. And of course, it's just by throwing money at the problem. But, the whole startup and technology and innovation is very, I mean, I won't say it's new, right? But I would say that it's relatively, that would be the baby. I was hoping that wouldn't happen. The determination to figure out our own sort of ecosystems or challenges, address them, and get
Mhm.
us all, jumping on the bandwagon of innovation and technology, which is where Canada, is headed, right? To compete globally, there's really no stopping that. And the same's happening here in the north. I think I would say we're 10 years behind Atlantic Canada, right? And Atlantic Canada's a couple of years behind, other ecosystems, and but things are moving. And my when I was I guess when I was sold on the idea of moving up here to Yukon to kickstart a startup ecosystem, and so on, I got excited because I did see the intention from the various governments. And here we have three governments: the Canadian government, the territorial government, and First Nations governments, which makes the Yukon a very interesting place to live and do business. But I saw that intention, that momentum, which is, to me, is very, very similar to what I've experienced in Atlantic Canada. Right? I mean, people are, when the government is in, and everyone is excited, and academia, and everyone is in, and they want to, and everyone wants to make make the life of entrepreneurs easy and facilitate them participating in trade missions, and and go abroad and participate in accelerators and do all sorts of things, and with the hopes that they will come back and bring all that wealth of knowledge and connections and all of that back. um, then that means there is momentum, and that means it's like it's the best time to become an entrepreneur, because the
Mm.
support is coming to you, as opposed to look at other ecosystem, more mature ecosystems in Canada. I mean, you need to go find the support, right? Because it's no longer coming to you, because everyone is busy servicing entrepreneurs. And there is a lot happening as far as programming, and as far as initiatives is concerned. And um, it's funny. I'll try not to laugh too much, because I don't want to sound like um, I don't want to sound like uh, uh, like there's an underlying message or anything
Mhm.
like that. But the day we rescheduled this call, rescheduled this podcast, and the reason why I did that is because the day we were supposed um, to to meet, to chat, I resigned, right, from my current role. And the reason why I resigned, so I was, I had just a lot of things to do, and I was still thinking I was gonna jump on the call, and because I was excited, But I resigned, and that meant that I had to figure lots of things out, and
Hmm.
and call some people and kind of get organized for that next step. And I'm laughing because it is, on the one hand, um, it was it's a good time, and it's obviously very good time in today as well. But it was interesting that you reached out, because I thought, yes, I can't really publicly announce anything yet, but big things are coming, and are going to happen this year, for the territory. When I came up here, I've told a few people about this, and I remember people will say, "Hey, you coming up here to, to help startups?" And and I ask people, "Well, hang on, kind of like you're talking about startups, and I'm not really following it." Say like, "Yeah, what's a startup?" And people, used to tell me, "Well, startup is a company that's starting up, right?" And they used to separate the word startup and they capitalize, the beginning of
Yeah.
the beginning of each word. And I was thinking, wow, this is gonna be a lot of work. I thought we were, I had no expectations, but a couple of years ago, we were absolutely unaware of where the rest of the country was as far as startup entrepreneurship, right? And
Hmm.
accelerators, incubators. All of this was, an ineligible language, and that no one spoke, and no one knew much about. But where we are today is at a place where the territorial government is really excited and aware, very much aware, that you know, this could be the way the territory diversifies the economy.
Hmm.
I won't speak for them, but obviously it is clear that, after 2 years working on this, and it's such a small town. It's absurd how small this is, for a really small population. And everyone, we all know each other, and everyone is aware that this how much this means to the territory, how much this could mean to the territory's GDP and its efforts to diversify the economy, keep people here, and bring in investment, attract talent. And again, you heard it all before, from Atlantic Canada and other places, right? Northern Ontario. I mean, we'll we'll trying to diversify our economies, right? And so and we do it differently, because we all have different assets and resources, and face different challenges. But with the support of the Canadian government, and with the support of a few other people, and definitely the private sector, big things will happen this year. Um, since I came up here, um, we started I designed this boot camp, and the boot camp was meant to be at first I thought a pre-accelerator, pre-incubator program. And well, then we didn't even have an incubator or an accelerator. We didn't have anything. But I thought, well,
Hmm.
if I can help you, get into a really good accelerator or incubator, depending on the stage of your and the needs of your business, well, then, the same idea of, you go and you participate. I support you with some funding to go and participate, and then you come back. And I thought that's a good way for us to get us, get people excited. Maybe we have some successes in that, and it's just a good way to get people excited about startup entrepreneurship. We started doing that, and we graduated 23 companies by the end of last year. Yeah, the end of last year. So that's 23 companies, 23 entrepreneurs went through the program in a span of 12 months, which was a very lofty target that I set for myself, and it worked out, quite well. Um, and uh, and and this spring, there will be a new program called STEM to Market, and it's all science and tech, and exclusively, which is it's the fourth iteration of that program, and an opportunity uh, to see how many people are there, kind of interested in launching tech and science, companies up here. And I got a bunch of applications, and I got exactly the number of people that I wanted. And then I thought, well, I think it's time for the to do to do more, right? And to start thinking about trade missions, and to start thinking about about promoting Yukon as a destination for startup entrepreneurship. And I mean, joked about this before with a few people, but it's the Yukon is not for everyone, right? I mean, if you
Hmm.
want to be a digital nomad and live in Barbados, or or Hawaii, well, that's what I mean. The Yukon is not going to be appealing to you because I think we had 15 or 12 degrees this past summer, right? It was cold all summer anyway. But this is not why you come to the Yukon. Now, if you want to be, if you think on of a place that is it's just humbling. It's just the mountains, the air that you breathe, the people, the connection to the land, which I think um, is very special. It's nothing like it's like nothing I've ever seen. It's a place that is worth visiting and deciding for yourself. Um, based on how you feel in this place and maybe consider staying and starting your company here. And so in a nutshell, that's kind of those are the kind of the things that I guess that's kind of what my
Mhm.
experience has been like. I've been really busy. It's been very unexpected. Lots of challenges that I definitely
Yeah.
wasn't expecting, but it worked out well. So
You know, I think you gave it a lot to digest, but can we start off? Let's let's start off in the beginning. Like, why did you end up coming to Yukon? You're not originally from the territories, am I correct?
no, no, not at all. In fact, I'm not. I mean, I'm not Canadian either. I came to. So I was running my second startup in Singapore, and I anyway, I'm originally from Spain, and I've been living overseas since I was 17. So
Mm.
I lived in Asia for many many years, and I was running my second startup, back in Singapore. And as a solo entrepreneur, and back in the day too, Singapore really didn't have a startup ecosystem. Right?
Mhm.
I mean, nothing at all, and it was all banking and then services, consulting. It wasn't really. I mean, definitely a good place to be and get a great job and all of that, but it wasn't a place for startups. But then at that time I had really no idea. I just quit my job with Thomson Reuters back in Geneva, and I was thinking, well, I just want to be an entrepreneur. So I moved to Asia, started a couple of businesses, and I was in Singapore on my second startup and realized, I mean, there's no support for startups here. Like, what am I
Mhm.
doing? And I was just starting to, I guess I was starting to learn about the whole startup entrepreneurship. I had angels, venture capital. I had no clue, right? So, and so I thought, okay, so why don't I just maybe, get some formal education in entrepreneurship and technology again. I didn't know where to start, and at that time there wasn't really much. So over there, so I applied for a master's in technology and innovation at uh, at the University of Nova Scotia, and I said, oh, all right, so let's move to Canada. I'm definitely in North America. I mean, I can cater to Canada, I can cater to the U.S. So it sounds like, it's just an hour flight from Boston. I mean, at the very least, I should be able to connect with very interesting people, and they should be able to, help out. And so I did, and so I moved to Halifax, and it was, again, it was just it was still early for Halifax as well, but there were so many programs, and there were a few venues where entrepreneurs would meet, and it was very interesting. And while I was in that program, I continued to run my Singapore business, but I moved it to Canada a few months after I relocated to Canada, and things went, things went quite well. I mean, I went on a few trip missions. I did a few things. The Canadian Technology Accelerator in New York City was a great experience. Was an eye opener. I went to a few trip missions with the Nova Scotia government. Um, I I just I visited a few of the Atlantic Canadian provinces, and it was a very interesting time for me. So essentially, I was kind of went through an accelerator program in Dallas, Texas, called Tech Wildcatters, and it was a B2B program for essentially for startups. And
Mhm.
uh, and at that time, it was really I had been pivoting.
What time was this around?
So this is so 2016.
Hmm.
I think 2016. Yeah,
Okay.
2000.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, and I moved to Canada in 2014. Uh, So 2 years later, I had pivoted a few times, and I definitely knew, a lot more about, the world of startup entrepreneurship. And so what I think started, I call it a startup. What I was doing in Singapore, frankly, it was probably a small and medium enterprise. It was just
Mm.
a guy with a website, and I was I mean, it was pretty, it was pretty fancy. I mean, I was competing with Indochino. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
Indochino.
what were you trying to do?
That exact same thing. And so the bottom line is that Indochino and I kind of started at the same time, except for they were in Vancouver and had access to a terrific ecosystem, right? The mentors, just the access. The access is everything to a startup, right? I mean, access to what you need when you need it, like as quickly as you can, and the best kind of advice or capital, whatever it may be. Access is everything to a startup.
Mhm.
And so I was competing with those guys, but those guys had access to the university. I think one of them was a graduate of UBC. I could be wrong, but I think so. And you know, it's a great ecosystem, right? It's just like they're great ecosystems in Canada, and they were, in my opinion, blessed to start Indochino in Vancouver. And I wasn't. I started, my company in Singapore, and nobody knew how to grow a startup, and I didn't have much advice. So I took it, so again, when I moved up here, I kind of, I look at the model, and I changed things a few times and pivoted a few times until I landed with a software company. And that software company is the idea that got me into that accelerator in Texas. And so great, same thing in Texas, just great ecosystem, just great people.
Sorry, what
Uh,
was the software company? What were we trying?
yeah, so the software company is called Tamborelio, and is a product lifecycle management software. And it's a cloud application. It's a SaaS company. And well, I guess, something terrible happened personally. I lost my dad at that time, and I was going through the accelerator, and I raised some money, and when I had three offices at that time. I had an office in Canada, in Halifax. I had an office in Dallas, and an office in Bangkok, and in Thailand. And I had, things were going well, and I was moving very quickly. And when, the passing of my dad happened, and I guess I just needed a break, right? I just needed a break. It was
Mm.
just like this is some, it's something like when something goes well, but then you wonder if it's the right thing. Like it's just like, if it's the right, doesn't, you know, you know, devoting so much time to a startup really means that, you're not going to spend time with your loved ones, right? And your friends. And so that's what I did. I mean, the only reason my startup succeeded is because I was 100% dedicated to my startup. Right? Let's say I was 90% dedicated to my startup and 10% dedicated to my family. And that's true. And I can't do anything about that, but it is what it is. It's a big sacrifice. And I was a solo entrepreneur, which makes this harder because you don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of or delegate to necessarily. I mean, at the early stages, it's all very hard. It's all very hard to figure it out on your own. So I kind of wanted to pause and take a bit of a break, and I came across this opportunity to come up here, and it sounded like, well, if I can continue to work on my startup on the side, because the company's in Texas, but I've been working on it all along, from here, and I can because there is internet, and people work remotely. It hasn't been a problem, um, but um, but I just needed a break, right? I just needed the break, so I moved up here, and I was looking, I was looking to give back. I was looking to share my experience, and so much like people have shared their experiences with me, and it's been
Mhm.
very helpful. I wasn't expecting to be here for this long. I wasn't expecting to stay for 2 years, to be honest. But then that opportunity to to build this. I mean, I'm not doing it alone, but I mean the opportunity of building this, and it just got really excited, and I'm exciting, and um, yeah, and so I came here 2 years ago. That is February, I believe it was February of 2019.
Mhm.
Came here in the winter. This is my third winter,
Mm.
and yeah, it's been interesting.
So, where did the decision come from to needing a break to getting into the Yukon?
Yeah, like I said, when my dad passed, I was just I couldn't really I couldn't really focus on the business anymore. Like I couldn't really do it at the with the I just couldn't bring the energy that the business needed.
Yeah.
So I literally I fired everybody. I had a I think we were like 14 people at that time or 15. I don't remember. Quite a few people. I mean, for startup, that's a team. That's a few people, right? And
Yeah.
no, I let everybody go, and I told my wife, let's just why don't we just go there and I can work, and there's no commute. I mean, I can walk to the office. I mean, this is really small, right? This is like Moncton, or I don't know, imagine just a small town, somewhere in Canada. Um, it was great. I mean, it was great, and I've been really busy working on working with Yukon, working with other people, and yeah, it's been a great yeah, I think it was the right decision. So I'm happy because a startup is a time sensitive sort of deal, like of enterprise, right? You can't just you can't be sitting on your and take 6 years to find product market fit or something like that. I mean, you gotta some people take a year. Some people take 6 months because they get lucky or less. Some people take 3 years, right? But that's because you're reaching out to your customers and you're learning,
Mhm.
you're iterating, and you just keep. I mean, this is like every single day you bring as much energy as you can,
Yeah.
and I just didn't. I just needed a break. I couldn't really do that, so spoke with my investors and agreed that I was going to take a break.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Was it burnout? Did you feel burnt out, or it was just like you were a lack of creative energy?
It's hard. It's hard to say. I mean, I mean, I don't know if it was. It wasn't burnt. Like I had, yeah. I don't know. I just felt. I just, sometimes it's funny how things work. Like um, when I was young, I always wanted to be the guy at the airport with the big phone and the suit, the big phone, the suitcase. I don't know. I just want to be, I wanted to be that person, that goes out and experiences the world and is successful, even though I had no clue what that meant, of course, right? But as years went by, like you want to make six figures, like whatever. I did all of those things that you can set yourself when you're young, or when you're, a teenager, or a young adult, or, all of these things. I must admit that I did. I achieved all of these things, but I achieved those. So the things that they come at a cost, and so I just feel that at the time, the time of the passing, I just feel like, well, was the cost really worth it? I mean, was me not being there, for my family, and was that worth the success or whatever? Like, however,
Mm,
for me, it was never about the money. It was about it's about, you know, proving to myself that I could just do these things, and then
yeah.
and I just feel like, for a moment, I feel like it wasn't worth it. And if you feel that way, you don't really bring the right energy. So I was not
Mhm.
burned out from the sense that I was tired. I couldn't wake up in the morning and work. Yeah, I mean, I worked for Yukon maybe even more than I worked for my own startup, right? But it was never about that. I guess it was more about just not being sure as to whether or not I was doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you leave your company behind, you liquidate it, you decide to move into a smaller community, where you can be closer to everyone, closer to your family, and hopefully have a lower pace, like slower pace, for in your working days. But how did that translate to Yukon Connect? Was that strategic? Did you talk to them first if we're moving here? Did you move here? Move to the Yukon and then find out about them? How did that connection have come to be?
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. So I mean, I can't, I was, I mean, I connected with them because I saw a post on LinkedIn, or somebody shared a post. I don't remember. I connected with them, and very quickly then turned into a conversation, and we had a couple calls, and they said, well, look, the Yukon is, I mean, it's not. I mean, if you don't come here, you won't really, you don't know what this looks like, or what this, may look like, and we can't, we want you to come up here and experience the Yukon before making
Hmm.
decisions. And so they flew me over for a week or so. Might have been a couple of days more, a week or a few days, Met a few people. There were a couple of events, so I was introduced to a few people, government, and just a number of people. And I got an Airbnb. I got to walk around town, and it was the winter, right? So I mean, like if you like it, if you, if you can cope with it, with the Yukon in the winter. I mean, the summer, it's just beautiful, right? And summer and spring, it's just beautiful. So frankly, I tell a lot of people, I don't know, I think I don't know what people's motivations are to move to Yukon. For me, I moved for this, right? So I moved, I was excited, I was excited about the opportunity um, to to kickstart an ecosystem here. I mean, there's only a few places left, as far as opportunities to do that in Canada, right? So definitely the territories, and then maybe a few other locations in the south, but not the capital of a province or a territory. And so this was for me, it was an exciting opportunity, right? So if I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop, kind of put my business aside for a period of time and go contribute to something, this seemed like the most worthy,
Hmm.
opportunity. And so they flew me up here and I experienced it. And yeah, sure, it was so cold, right? But I'm not, as much as I enjoy a hike or mountain biking, I just came here for the job. I mean,
Yeah.
just came here for this. Like that's the only reason why I came up here. I didn't care about the weather. And frankly, I haven't really. It will come as a surprise to a lot of people if they listen to this, but I don't think I haven't really been anywhere.
Yeah.
I just worked for 2 years straight, and I don't think I've actually been to many places in Yukon.
Hmm.
That is the honest truth. From the office
Yeah.
to my home to the office, and so it was the opportunity, Um, that's it.
Yeah. Was this your first time like being on the other side of entrepreneurship, helping other companies and other founders succeed? And how did you find that being in that role?
Yeah, that's such a great question. That's such a great question. Yes, it was the first time, um, and it felt weird at first because I mean, having spent. I mean, I must admit, of course, I'm not Asian, but I, I moved to Asia when I was really young. I mean, by young, I mean like 18 or 19 or something. That's that young. You're a young adult. I mean, personality-wise, you still learn about the world. Like
Of
you don't
course.
really have a fully formed personality and character and so on. You just, you're just too young. I just grew up as a man in Asia, and so the idea of I'm an expert and all that, those things don't really fly in Asia very well. People are a little more humble, and so things just work differently. And when I moved up here, and I was in a position where I was sort of the educator or the teacher or whatever, like the mentor. I just felt very humbled by that because I wasn't exactly sure whether or not I had enough experience to be in that position, right? So I didn't want to mislead people, and so or I mean, I had experience. I guess I just didn't know exactly how much experience I had and how relatable that could be or helpful that could be to entrepreneurs. And um, I after running these programs for a few times, I realized that it was very helpful because I mean, when you start companies in different countries, then you deal with different jurisdictions. So you learn a lot about law, right? First of all, you're just dealing with lawyers, you're dealing with accountants. I mean, you learn a lot. You learn about trade, microeconomics, macroeconomics. You learn about a number of things, and that's very transferable knowledge to companies, especially of course startups that do business cross borders by default, are looking to grow and take over the world and be leaders in a certain category. um, this my experience was very useful source in mentors, very useful kind of looking at just building your board, building your advisory board, looking for funding, what funding, when to seek funding, how to how to build a team and all of those things. And so I've gone through that process so many times, and it goes without saying that I fail, most of the times. And I hear a lot of, I listen to lots of podcasts and I listen to a few of your podcasts as well, and they're really interesting because I think the theme around I mean, I would say that what's common to entrepreneurs who succeed, and I don't think I'm there yet, but I think what's common to entrepreneurs who succeed is that they fail a few times, and it's just because you try and you don't know, and then you fail, and you just keep trying, and eventually you find your own way to succeed, right? You have your formula to how you how to how to start a business, the type of culture that you want for your business, and all these things just become very methodological, and it's easier. Um, and it's easier for you to start something and make something successful. So it was, yeah, became a mentor overnight, accidental educator, as I uh, as I say, and I'm just very humble by the fact
Yeah.
that some of the companies that I supported are doing great, right? So that's
Can
humbling.
we talk about that? What are some of the companies that stand out for you, and what kind of work do you do with them?
Yeah. So as part of the program, this boot camp, I formally run the program, or used to, and then on the side, outside of the boot camp or outside of the program, outside office hours, and I mentor them and support them, and with introductions, and some of the companies that, in my opinion, have a lot of potential. Uh, First is, one company that I like very much is called Neighborly North, and um, they are essentially a local option to your typical Airbnb. They offer, local experiences, connect people in the local community up here in the north. So, instead of doing your Airbnb, typical Airbnb booking, when you come to the north, if you book through Neighborly North, essentially you are connected with the community through them. And so that's the concept there is to grow across the north and to be the brand, the Airbnb brand for the north and competitor, of course. And they've been growing, very much since they started, and they're a graduate of the program. They raised some money and from local investors, which is another thing. There you go, some local investors, angels, and they're looking now to raise um, a formal round within the coming. That was a pre-seed, so I guess a seed round within the coming months. So, I mean, it was a great example of a company that that has just come out of the program and is doing great. They'll be in they're betting on the north, they're betting on the Yukon, they're betting on the north, the territories, Alaska, northern BC, and so on. And so fantastic. A few of the companies that I can mention, definitely Disco Velo is another company that has come out of the program, raised some money as well, and they're developing a software that, in a nutshell, helps. It works with the stationary bikes, and it helps kids at school get in the zone, or the pocket, as they call it. So through, by pedaling in their stationary bikes, then they can play a game that helps them, you get in the zone. So find a way for them to be able to um, use that extra energy that they have, and um, and be able to concentrate in the classroom and take advantage of that classroom time. Or for those kids that for whatever reason may be agitated and so on, they pedal in the classroom, and as a means to let everyone else, helps everyone else, let everyone else listen to the teacher, and enjoy their and take advantage of the classroom. So, I mean, they those are two companies that I know are doing very well. There's a third company that is an indigenous business. The name of the business is Grandma Teresa, and Teresa is an amazing person, because so essentially she's a First Nations, a Yukon First Nation citizen. She is also majority owner in the business, and she sells bannock, and bannock is a traditional First Nation staple. and she's been working on her business for a while. Went through the boot camp, and was connected with the Canadian Technology Accelerator, Vancouver and Seattle office, uh, and connected with Costco and a few other retailers to prepare her to potentially have Costco be a distributor of her banner. So to be able to make those connections and to see that those things can happen in the Yukon too,
Hmm.
exciting. And so I'm not going to take more credit than to say that I made those connections. She did all the work, and everyone else involved did all the work. Uh, but just to see that that you can do that here, that to remind Yukoners and any other northern business owner that their businesses are also Canadian businesses, and the services provided to every Canadian business is also accessible to them, is important because most of and this is legacy, unfortunately, and I hope that it changes, but the way the North has been separated, and that's is a very negative, legacy, is that,
Mm.
for every most, I won't say every, because there are so many government departments, and I wouldn't know, but um, some of the most important to me as far as economic development is concerned, federal offices are based in Vancouver. we I don't think we, except for CRA, I don't think we have anybody up here. So that means that, well, people in Vancouver naturally, if they don't live here, they don't really know what's happening here, right? And so that's a challenge. And so traditionally, the Yukon, as federally, so the Yukon's federal services tend to be in BC, NWTs in Alberta, in Nunavut. I could be wrong, but I think it's mostly Ontario, and maybe Quebec to to some extent. So the challenge with that is that the territories, well, we don't really have, um, we're not very well connected, because if we're connected to the south, and money makes the world go around, right? If we don't really connect because of money, and up here, you it's all about economic development, right? And development overall, infrastructure, education, and all of that. You're going to be on the phone with people in BC all of the time, and you never going to be connecting with NWT or Nunavut if you're in the Yukon. And again, some people do, but there's the connect. I mean, I haven't had any connection in 2 years, simply because, well, everything we need is in BC. So yeah, I mean, I just it's been interesting to just to see the federal government, because of these companies, right? And interested in what we're doing and paying more attention to what we're doing, and extending some invitations to to some of the programs, some of the things that are happening down there as far as funding that's available and all of that. We're unfortunately out of the loop of a lot of those things. um, but yeah, we do have a couple of startups that are doing really well as far as revenue is concerned. I mean, I'm sure, uh, either both, or either one of them has already surpassed $1 million in revenue. They're software companies. One of them is Aprendo.io, and the other one is Proof. Aprendo is an entrepreneur from Mexico who moved to NWT, and then from NWT was working for a local company, and decided to move to Yukon and start his company here. And I think he's preparing now for, he's working out towards Series A, and he's working out of Yukon. And I think he's got 20 employees or something like that. So I mean, that's a SaaS company,
Hmm.
working out of here, and it might actually be our first exit, right? And definitely our first company going Series A, which is very exciting, right? And the and Improve is Techstars, Toronto graduate company, that operates out of the Yukon. So that's another example of a company that who would say that we'll have
Yeah.
companies like that up here, but not a lot of people know, right?
Yeah.
And there are Proskita and a couple of other companies that are doing really well. So, like I said, things are in the past 2 years, things have happened.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Canada's 2100 plan, which is by the year 2100, Canada has a plan to increase the national population to 100 million citizens, with the majority with the 20 like about 20 million being pushed up to the Northern Territories.
No, no.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
it's
Is
very
that
obscure.
is that really? Is that
Yeah,
real?
so it's called the 2100 plan. It's not very widely openly talked about, but it's a long-term strategy being put in place by policy centers. So one of the main reasons we think that the majority of our population lives near the 49th parallel, near the United States, within 20 minutes of the United States, because that's where the money is, that's where the economy is. But actually, from the founding of our country, Canada purposely built infrastructure and moved people in to the border because we were at war with the states, right? As a British colony, against the guys who rebelled against colonies, right? And so they purposely built infrastructure and population who can already be called to arms to defend the huge territory, right? So that's one of the main reasons why the North was never conquered, because they wanted to keep it close to the states. And then later on, economic ties changed, and we became dependent on the states' economy. But now there's a huge push to build infrastructure and support to and push new populations into the Northern Territories. One, resources and fresh water. Two, because of the unfortunate consequence of global warming, is that the Arctic is thawing out, and new shipping lanes are opening up in the north. Right.
Mhm.
I think it's gonna save shipping lanes like 20-30% of travel times and fuel traveling to the Arctic to go from Asia to Europe. So it's opening up new areas for ports, for trade, for commerce. And just like Vancouver is built completely out of the port system. There's 5 major rail lines that come to Vancouver to build the city.
Mhm.
There's an opportunity for the North to have something similar for to control the northern hemisphere. So we don't know where that's going to be, but only 3 nations have claimed now to the northern for the Arctic oceans. All right. Previously, it was considered like a no man's zone because it was the Arctic and it was frozen as thunder. But now it's thawing out and becomes more shippable. There's $40 trillion worth of oil, gas, and mineral wealth underneath there that are now open for exploitation. So Denmark, and Russia all are the only 3 nations that have claim to this wealth. Russia has 20 million people within 20 minutes of the North Pole, right? Of the northern coastline, right? They have the most sizable population and therefore are claiming the North actually belongs to them, whereas Canada has the most territorial claim rights. And Denmark is trying to claim that too. That's why the joke came up with Donald Trump buying Denmark,
Right.
because of the oil and mining gas, right? The United States wanted to play in there too, by buying, sorry, not Denmark, buying Greenland from Denmark, right? So there's a huge opportunities coming up for the north for oil and gas, for exploration, for coastal trading centers, and for the need for that. And one of the main things lacking is population and economic support there, right? One for trade, for labor, and to help build infrastructure. So I haven't heard much of the internal gears of the mechanism of the government or like turning towards this. There's not even like a national debate about this, but
Mhm.
these are coming out of policy and think tanks now, right? Trying to gear up forward for the next the coming generation. So, what I'm interested in about is there any movement there? Like, have you noticed in the last few years that there has been more and more shift economically or more political focus towards Northern Territories?
It's interesting. I did not know about this, and I will learn more about it now that you mentioned, because I think it's interesting. Um, well, I would say yes. I mean, I could be wrong in the number, but I think we get about $1 billion every year from the federal government for a
Mm-hmm.
population that might be, I should probably know this by now, but something like 40,000 people, right? That's a lot of money for 40,000 people. And the only way I would justify $1 billion for 40,000 people um, is because we're building the infrastructure for a growing population. Now,
Mm-hmm.
now this I did notice, and I figured a growing population. And so I didn't know about this, but what I did do is that I went to I went online to find out what others predicted Canadian population will be like by year 2100. I did that, and my understanding from that is that we will grow by 20 million overall. That's what I read from various sources, our various think tanks, that our population countrywide will be like in by 2100. So adding 20 million. Now, if you tell me 100 million population, I've never read that anywhere, but it's very interesting, and that would sort of explain why you would invest $1 billion here, you know. And I don't know how much the government, the central government invests in, or the Canadian government invests in the Northwest Territories and Nunavut, but I would assume a lot of money as well. I would
Hmm.
assume very different from, very, far away from that billion figure. Um, that's what I mean. I would say that. The other thing that I would say though is that you need the buy-in from 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 First Nations governments, right? And so that's to say that to bring 20 million up here, 20 million people up here to, I guess, the territory. So that will be shared among the three territories. I don't see it. I mean, I
Yeah.
see it, but I don't see it as in, but I don't see it um, as far as, telecommunications, schools, like the whole, education. And sure, you can build infrastructure and so on, but you have to have people moving up here. And I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I mean, we experienced -50 last year, minus
Hmm.
49 plus wind chill, and in some parts -55 plus wind chill, -60. I mean, this is not for everyone. Living
Hmm.
up there is not for. I mean, you don't. I mean, I could pay you an extra $30,000 a year or $40,000 a year. Trust me. After your first -50, you probably rethink those 20, 30, 40 grand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not like, again, to me, it was never about the weather. But trust me, if it wasn't because, my dedication to my job and because I'm just, my personality, those people like to be out there and really need that socializing and just, just the occasional coffee or beer or
Yeah.
whatever they fancy. Um, it's not an easy place.
Yeah.
Now, if you continue to pour in billions of dollars, I'm sure. I mean, for the right, I guess with the right amount of money and incentives, you'll come and and build uh whatever is needed. But I just don't, I do see that the North is warming up, but it's not warming up to the point where our winters are going to be like BC, right? Or Vancouver. I shouldn't say BC, but like Vancouver. I mean, no. I mean, I spoke with somebody. It was Wednesday, I think it was Monday, who was saying that they haven't seen any snow all winter. I mean, we
Hmm.
saw snow in October. I mean, it was. I mean, it's been cold all year, and we had snow in October, and it is February, and it is cold and it's snowy. So I say, that means that you can't build all year round. You're not building roads with conditions like this, so there's only limited time to do certain things. I don't know how they, if they do plan on building and bringing 20 million up here, I would challenge that, maybe the I would challenge that housing is a huge issue in the north, and if that's true, well, it's gonna take a lot of time and a lot of money and figuring out partnerships and other things to provide decent housing to those who live up here
Hmm.
now. And that's not, I mean, it's a big problem in Yukon, but I believe it's a bigger problem in NWT and an even bigger problem in Nunavut. So
Hmm.
if you want to bring 20 million, first I think you need to provide decent housing for the people who are already here.
Yeah.
And the reason that hasn't been done is because of what I just said. It
Yeah.
is cold. It is difficult to get materials up here. It is difficult to get trained labor up here. It's not an easy place to do business. And I
Hmm.
remember there is a place in northern Russia. I believe I could be wrong. I forgot the name, but there's a place in northern Russia where you could just people go and make, you know I just over 100K US or more, and for Russia that's very good money for unless you're connected. Let's leave it at that. But I do know that people just go there and work for a bit and then move back to whatever village they're from,
Mm.
and it's not a very livable place. Well, I think sure, Whitehorse is not northern Yukon, you know, or northern,
Yeah. Yeah.
or like other places in the territories. But it's very interesting. I'll learn more about it. I just find it interesting. I really haven't seen, I see the money coming in, but I really haven't seen this money, and maybe that's the problem. But I will shoot myself in the foot if I said anything more. But
Mm.
I haven't really seen
Yeah.
money solving some of these problems. So.
Yeah, I've recently heard, I've only recently heard about this plan. I've been following it because it's ambitious, and I love the ambitiousness of it. But part of the supporting evidence for this, right? Um, in Russia, they have a 2 million a person city that the average temperature in the winter is -60, right? And they survive. Like it's a whole city. Like they figured it out. So it is proven for that. Two, if we're ever going to live on Mars and like all that, like if you're going to live in such an extreme climate there, there's no better testing ground than the Northern Territories, right? You
Sure.
can survive there. You can transplant that stuff there. Three is climate refugees, right? Bangladesh alone, with a 5 to 10 to 20 feet rise in what's it coastal waters,
Mhm.
right, is going to lose a landmass that's housed currently by about close to 100 million people. Right, they're all going to move. Canada historically has been really good with immigration and refugees, but like one of the things that we don't really recognize very very much is that the people that we bring in are generally top tier. Like our
Mhm.
processes are very stringent. Like even the refugees you bring in are screened to a certain degree. They're educated. They're mostly from like like white sorry middle class families from their home nations, right? And they're married, they have stability, they have families, right? And they bring here, and it's like we're bringing we have cream of the crop. And with the refugee crisis, the climate refugee crisis that might occur in the next few years, few decades, coming decades,
Mhm.
we're going to have pick of the litter. We have 20% of the fresh water. We have a lot of land, and we're willing to invest. And you think about it, and you're like, oh, most of these people are coming from the tropics. They're never going to survive in the north. I actually I talked to a gentleman. He's from my home nation of Sri Lanka. He's also Tamil. There's about I think about 200,000 Tamils that came to Canada during the 80s, late 80s and 90s. Fleeing persecution and cultural genocide. And this guy was one of the few people who ended up leaving. Everyone else went to the cities. He went to the northern territories, and he established one of the only general stores in like a huge mile radius apparently.
Mhm.
And his general store is also where the RCMP are located. That's the only fixed structure. And he runs a store. He lives out of it. He got used to the weather, and over 10 years started buying up the land and properties because it's the only main business in the area, and became a landowner. And he has his own fiefdom. And like he actually tried to get his family members from back home, sponsored him to Canada, come and like, hey, come help me. We have land here. Let's build something here. But none of them could handle it. They're like, you can pay me whatever you want. You can show me whatever you want. It's not worth it. They left. But he stayed.
Mhm.
I met another bush pilot. He flies a plane again from the tropics, but
Mhm.
he flies a plane in northern northern British Columbia to that region,
Mhm.
and he services about 20 communities that where he's the sole source of transportation for goods, services, and people, right?
Yeah.
The air taxi service almost, all right? And I think there is a entrepreneurial spirit, just like people who want to build companies and take on big challenges. There are people who want to take on the old school challenges of conquering land, of conquering extreme conditions, of surviving through it. And I think one of the cool things with the right support and with the right infrastructure and with the right drive, right, especially economic drivers that are coming, I think there could be a push here to change the fate of our nation, right? Like open up our areas, make it more densely populated, and through that, become more interconnected.
Well, I definitely think so. I mean, there is Norway and Sweden and Finland and Estonia and those places are cold, right? As
Mm.
cold as it gets. Granted, the coldest place on Earth historically has always been Yukon. Uh,
Mm.
but they're not, we're at this very similar parallel, dealing with very similar, challenges. And I think the only difference between them and us is that they're more populated than we are. As
Yeah.
far as the North is concerned, of course, right? Actually, as far as landmass is concerned, Canada is definitely, you know, very, very. It's a very low population density. But
Mm.
I find that that's the only reason. If there it was a bigger, population supports everything, right? I mean, population will support universities. Universities would support, internships or interns and young graduates that will then, feed into the economy as, future families, mortgages, and that will fuel construction and businesses, service. I mean that's how we build, modern, um, how, how we build cities or communities in this age.
Hmm.
So that would make sense. Now, I just don't know if to, I always say that it's very interesting, the whole idea of, of bringing in immigrants. I think I always joke with, having relocated to Canada myself. And being, just back in Singapore and looking at the people when I was, putting in my application for a student visa, or study visa rather. I always joke that, the biggest blessing to Canada and the biggest threat is this, and by threat I mean, like, Canada is attracting just super smart people. You said it, right?
Yeah.
This is true, right? And the biggest threat to me is that, well, you underutilize these people. Either you
Mm.
lose or you disenchant them. And either one of those two is bad, because when they come here, they're ready. They're ready to give, they're ready to build, they're ready to do anything. They'll move to Yukon. They don't care, right? And so I've been on calls with people who say, look, I'm in the UAE. I just landed a permanent residency, so I want to move to Canada. And frankly, I don't know. It all sounds cold to me. Obviously,
Mm.
no matter where you look, it does not. He knows it's not going to be like the UAE. And I said, well, I could come to the Yukon or I could come to Nova Scotia. It doesn't really matter. I'm just looking to see, like, who, what's out there. What's out there for me. And I feel it's important, when you bring people like that you have a strong value proposition. And oftentimes, you pointed some of the things that truly matter. If I was in the UN and you told me this, we have the third largest reserves of, fresh water in the planet. I care about that, obviously, or from Singapore with the drinking, recycled water. I would say, well, that's brilliant. That sounds like an upgrade, right? And there's tons of land, and so, well, that sounds like an upgrade. But how about, starting a business? How about doing business? How about doing certain things? Like, I think, certain things up here, should work better than they do. We should be more competitive, and we should, and we're doing lots of things to build a more competitive, more resilient economy. We have a long way to go. So I think, what I would appeal to, if there's anybody at the government listening, is that it's important to put a lot of effort into attracting great people. But great people are great. Doesn't matter where they come from, Sri Lanka, where they come from, from South Africa, Ghana, Guatemala. If they're smart, they're smart. They're probably smarter than most people around you today, right? Because they're smart. They're one of the smartest in their nation, right? So out of millions of people, they're the smartest people. And so they make the cut and they come here, and they don't take very long to figure things out, right? They don't take very long that if you go to Alberta, you're going to pay less taxes, and there's red tape, and there's less red tape, so they'll, can do more things. Like, they don't take very long to figure these things out. They probably figure these things out before they jump on a plane and get to Canada, right? So what's important is to recognize that we don't just attract, immigrants that are, because they find the proposition of more land, freedom, and all of that, and access to, these resources appealing. Um, we need to have a strong plan for them to play a bigger role in the economy, and some of them are, and I feel like some of them are heavily underutilized.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited because Canada continues to attract these people, so that's phenomenal. I mean, like, eventually we're gonna have, like, this is going to be a very exciting place to do business. Even the north, right? People are already moving up here, and that's exciting. I think it's important to continue to pay attention to how do we better utilize this labor, this talent that's coming up here, and staying competitive. So I'm excited
Yeah.
for this. I play for Team Canada after all. So
Definitely. Um, so I know we're a little over time here, but I really want to cover, you disclosed that you decided to leave your current position.
Mhm.
What brought you that decision, and where you want to go from there?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, part of it is, part of it is, part of it is growth, personal growth. Part of it is you mature, you become aware of the things that you're good at, the things that you're not good at, the things that you are not interested in, the things that interest you, and then you start making choices, right? And then, yeah, sure, the blessing of, being able to be in a good place. I mean, I guess both emotionally or money wise, to be in a place that you can say, all right, so look, I'm gonna resign and take some time to think about, my next steps. My next steps, for me, it was, when I came to Yukon track, it was more about, let's get this thing kickstarted, and I think we did. I think we did. I mean, if you ask people around, I mean, not everyone. I mean, there's still those who say a startup is a company that's starting up. I mean, I mean, there will be those who still say that, but there'll be those who, starting to connect the dots, and those who are starting to be very ambitious and believe, like some of the companies that I've mentioned, that they can truly build a unicorn out of the Yukon. And look, however absurd, I don't think it's absurd, but I think however absurd people may think, that's possible to do that out of the north because we don't have access to capital. I mean, it is true. I mean, if as if it wasn't challenging anywhere else in Canada, it is even more challenging here. But look, that's how lots of ecosystems get started in Canada, let alone other parts of the world, right? And so, I I um I think I did as much as I could to kind of build a foundation with this organization, but I work as well with a limitation of an organization that wasn't built, wasn't designed to do this. It wasn't designed to support startup entrepreneurs. It was designed to help build community, to give access to space, to give access to a co-working space, give access to a make space, for to do certain things, and not so much build to support startup entrepreneurship and get into investment and all of that. So I work with that framework, right, in that mandate, and that is very limited. So I always, lately I realized that, well, they're doing a great job of what they're doing. I mean, you can't say they're not. I think they're doing a fantastic job, and anyone in the Yukon recognizes their the great job they've done at connecting people and giving access and providing access even during the pandemic, ensuring that, those doors to stay open and people, could come in and use the internet and, have access to a printer and lots of those things we will take for granted if you're in the south. Um, but that's not really easy to come by here in the north, right? So this organization plays that role. For me right now, it's all about startup entrepreneurship. I mean, we need to, it's all about startup entrepreneurship, potentially get people, getting people excited about, starting a super cluster for the north, starting something really big, super cluster type here for the north, connecting universities. There's only one university in the north, Yukon. Yukon University just turned a university last year from a college. The other two territories have colleges, not yet universities. There's so much work to do,
Yeah.
and I think I think with that framework that I was provided, I think I've done as much as I could, and now it's time, to um, maybe coming up with something new, something of my own, and contribute to that momentum, uh, and maybe build a framework that is uh, limitless.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I'm really excited to see what comes out of this. It seems like you're very deeply passionate about what you do. You're extremely well versed in the startup world with your own personal background, and you're not afraid of challenges. Clearly, right? Living in where you are. But yeah, William, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. I really enjoyed learning more about what's going on in the north, and your insights were really helpful. It's been a pleasure.
thank you. Well, thanks again for having me. I always, I'm just an email away or a call away. I'm always looking for people who are interested in supporting entrepreneurs up here or interested in partnerships that can help us connect the Yukon with, with everyone else in Canada. And yeah, I mean, it's the road ahead is exciting, and I'm glad to be to be surrounded by, lots of supporting organizations. This is a venue that allows us put the word out there and let people know that we exist. So I thank you. Thanks for that, and thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. Stick around for a quick debrief, and for everyone who tuned in, thanks again. Episode 111.